Hey, what's up, guys? On behalf of Brian Cole and myself, Harry Campbell, we just want to welcome you all and say thanks for joining us for our webinar. We're really excited to bring you this, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, very insightful, and hopefully we can provide you guys with a ton of value too. So, this is obviously something new that we're trying, and we want to see how it goes, and we want to see what kind of feedback we get and learn from you guys just as much as we can. So, um, but yeah. Anyways, so if you guys are on there on the chat right now, you can see that there's a little chat button up in your upper left-hand corner. You can use that to chat, and we'll be able to interact with you guys, and you can interact with each other going forward. So basically, the reason why we're having this webinar, we really want to help people. We have a ton of experience. We've been driving for a while. We have a lot of combined experience. I'm a part-time driver. Brian's a full-time driver, so we bring two different perspectives too, which is pretty cool. And basically, we want to bring you guys with this webinar. We're talking about, the driver market right now is getting saturated. There are a ton of drivers out there. There are a ton of people signing up every day, and we want to make sure that we're all basically being as effective as possible and figuring out ways to help each other all earn more money. Stay tuned till the end. We're actually going to give you guys a quick little intro to our course. The video course that we just released over at MaximumRideSharingProfits.com. And then you can also, if some of you guys might realize that your name is showing up as F name, L name, so we had a little error with some of the registrants, but most of you guys should be all right. So if that happened to you, my apologies. That was my fault, not Brian's. But yeah, so feel free to introduce yourself on the chat, say where you're from and how you found us and all that good stuff. Other than that, though, for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Harry, and real quick, I'm going to intro you guys to my partner on the course and for this webinar, Brian Cole. So, Brian, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for introducing me, Harry. I really appreciate it. Seeing a lot of names in the chat that I do not know, so that's really cool. Awesome. I'm very pleased to meet all of you. Obviously, I'm Brian Cole. I live here just north of Cincinnati, Ohio, and that is also the market that I drive for Uber with. I've been an Uber driver now for the last 6 months. I started back in September. My background is a Domino's Pizza delivery driver. I did that for 18 months before deciding to drive for Uber, and I have to say that driving for Uber has been definitely a great pleasure to do. I'd say that, Cincinnati is your typical average-sized market. It's not a small market. It's not a big market, like New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago. It's right in the middle. It's got sports teams. There's enough going on in Cincinnati that there's always something to do, and there should be some business, on most days during the week. And that's how I got started. I wanted to develop a YouTube channel, which right now you should be seeing a link for. I have become a quote-unquote YouTube star in my space. Those of you who follow my channel already, I greatly appreciate that. If you have not followed my channel, go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more tips, strategies, and advice for all you Uber, Lyft, and other rideshare drivers. For a while, back in the fall of 2014, last year, I did 70, 80 hours a week for Uber. I was doing crazy, crazy hours, very, very crazy hours. And I wanted to do that, partially because I want to see what an Uber driver could make. And obviously I got my answer. I had 13 consecutive $1,000 weeks driving those crazy hours here in Cincinnati. So there is definitely money to be made with ride sharing, and that's why Harry and I are here. We're here to deliver the value and to help you guys out on Uber money-making strategies.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think one of the reasons why I decided to partner up with Brian on this course, and just in general, I mean, as you guys may be aware, he's actually a contributor on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel of my own, and one of the reasons why I got connected with Brian was because I was seeing his videos pop up all over the place. And the thing that I like about him is he brings a very different perspective. I mean, I'm driving part-time, and over in Orange County, LA, and he's a full-time driver in Cincinnati, which is pretty much the complete opposite. And I think the first time I even talked to Brian, I misspelled Cincinnati, so that's how well I know the area. But it's definitely cool to see so many people saying where they're from, and just seeing all the different places that you guys come from, because it really, regardless of what cities Uber is big in, the people that I find that I like helping the most and the people that I see over and over, which I'm sure Brian sees the same, are from all over the country. You have markets big and small, and that's really the point of this webinar and our course in general. We really want to be able to give tips and give strategies and tactics that are going to apply to everyone. So for those of you guys who don't know, you might be wondering who I am. My name's Harry Campbell. I am the rideshare guy. I run a blog and podcast for drivers that basically helps empower you guys, helps empower drivers by teaching you to learn how to earn more income, how to explain, taxes, insurance, all the strategies along those lines. And I actually do this full time now. So I used to be an engineer. And I started driving on the side, and then I started blogging about it. And while I'm not a full-time Uber or Lyft driver right now, I'm still a part-time Uber or Lyft driver. I am a full-time, I guess you would say, blogger and writer, and working on developing some products. So for me, it's been a big step, a big leap to basically leave my job, and that's what I'm doing now full-time, is basically figuring out ways to help empower drivers. So you guys know that I'm serious about this, and I'm really serious about helping drivers, because selfishly, it feels good to help other people, and people seem to be enjoying my content, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you guys on this webinar tonight. So if you guys have ever been to my site, it's over at therideshareguy.com. I've got a podcast, articles, YouTube, and basically just all the different methods that you can go and check me out. So my offer will be coming up on the site. If you haven't been to my site, I definitely recommend that you go and check it out. It's definitely cool to see. I'm starting to see a lot of names come up in the chat right now, so I'm not going to be able to give a shout out to everyone, but it's definitely cool to see a lot of you guys pop on. And we're at 100 attendees right now, which is really awesome, because for me, I figured that there would be some interest in this webinar, but I also was a little nervous because I've never done something like this before, and I just wanted to see, hey, are people going to be interested in what we have to say? And obviously we haven't gotten into the meat of the webinar yet, but I'm definitely excited to give you guys all of our tips and tell you a little bit more about what we've learned and see how we can help you. So the reason why we decided to do this whole webinar is basically because, if you guys haven't realized this yet, the market is getting saturated, right? The market for Uber is, especially Uber and Lyft, I mean, there's more drivers coming on every day. And the thing about it is a lot of new drivers are coming on, and a lot of older drivers don't realize that for the same reasons that you started, for the same reasons that you joined Uber, whether it's the flexibility or the money or any of those reasons that made you sign up, are the same reasons that a lot of other drivers are signing up. And because of a lot of other drivers, you want to take that into consideration and say, hey, now, are you going to be the type of driver that embraces competition, or say, hey, how do I outwork? How do I be smarter? And you guys know that my big saying is work smarter, not harder. So hopefully you guys haven't gotten tired of that saying, but I think it's just so apparent. Because there are things that, I love driving, but there are things that I would rather be doing. I would rather be hanging out with my wife when she's not busy with med school. I would rather be hanging with my friends. So I know Brian can speak to that too. I'm sure that he has stuff he'd rather be doing. Brian, what do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. And Uber's a great place to even leverage an opportunity, the flexibility that Uber offers to all of its drivers. By being able to log in and out whenever we want to is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why you're seeing such a big influx of drivers right now. So Uber released this study in December, right? I'm sure if you guys are following my news roundup, I covered it extensively and on my Facebook page, and I think Brian may have even done a video. But basically, in this study, they said as of December, there are 160,000 Uber drivers. This is just Uber, right? We're not even talking Lyft. 40,000 of which signed up in December. So I know we're not on here to do a lot of math, but that's what? 25%, right? So 25% of the workforce has less than a month experience as of December. Obviously, we're a couple months down the road, and they haven't released updated numbers, but that's crazy. You guys think about it, the type of growth that they're seeing, right? Now, because of that growth, you're basically just saying, hey, a lot of these drivers are coming on. I mean, it's not just big cities either. It's small too. I mean, I'm in LA and we have a ton of drivers here, but I mean, Brian, I'm sure you can speak to how many drivers have you seen over in your market? Just, I mean, how many more drivers are there even in Cincinnati in a smaller mid-sized market? Yeah?
Oh, a lot more, definitely. I'd say probably, I mean, they don't give numbers specifically here in our market, but I'd say there's probably at least another 300, 400, 500 drivers since I first started back in September, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, so the whole point of this webinar and our course in general is the fact that you have to realize that people are going to be signing up. There's always going to be people willing to work for less, and there's always going to be people joining this job because, I mean, let's face it, the flexibility is unmatched. I mean, I took a whole month off when I went on my honeymoon, as my podcast listeners will know, and I didn't work for a whole month straight. I came right back and worked July 4th weekend and, made a killing. So that flexibility is really what attracts a lot of people. And, you're starting to see Uber and even Lyft to some degree starting to spread out into big cities. Obviously, they're in the big cities, but small ones too. So I can see on the chat that we have tons of people from all over. Let's see, I can just name off a couple. We got San Luis Obispo right near me, Miami, Florida, and Chicago, and just everywhere. So feel free to let us know where you guys are on the chat. That'll definitely help us going forward. And we're trying to tailor this webinar and our course in general. We're not going to be able to give you city-specific information like what sports teams are great for you, but we are able to help with the more general and information that you'll be able to apply pretty much everywhere. So with that, we're going to kind of get into things and basically just talk about one of the biggest things right now that I see as a way to earn more money is driving for multiple services. Now, as you guys know, I'm a huge proponent of driving for Uber, Lyft, whatever other services will suit you, because at the end of the day, we know that these companies aren't looking out for your best interests. They want Uber's number one goal is reliability. They want a ride available the second that a passenger requests. And so with that being said, they really care the most about how many drivers can they get on the platform. Now, at times, demand is going to vary between apps, right? Uber, Lyft, and Sidecar. And I mean, it obviously is different in every city, but when demand varies, you want to be able to take advantage of those variations. I mean, I know I've had a ton of success driving for Uber and Lyft, and while I definitely make more with Uber, since I am in a bigger market, there are a lot of options with Lyft. Brian, what do you think about driving Uber versus Lyft and that whole dynamic?
Yeah, definitely. As Harry said, and I'll echo this again, Uber is going to be more busy in most markets than Lyft or any other competitor that's in town. Now, here in Cincinnati, we have Uber and Lyft. And if you have the opportunity to drive for both, do it. I would highly recommend doing this because during the busy times, like during the bar rushes, at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, you may be able to get away with driving for one service. Being able to, stick with Uber, stick with Lyft, stick with whatever you want to. But what about the times where it's not as busy? We all wish it could stay as busy during the bar rush around the clock, right? But that's just not the reality. So you need to be driving for more than one service if you want to make the most out of doing ride sharing. So I started doing Uber in September, and I got approved for Lyft 6 weeks later. And once I got approved for Lyft, I saw that I was staying a lot busier here in Cincinnati. I was not having to go to one of my favorite places to go, camp out and wait for a ride, because that's not going to do you any good. The less time that you can spend actually, camping out, the better. Because your time is money, and if you're just camping out waiting for a ride, you're not going to make anything, and that defeats the whole purpose. So you want to keep your hourly rates high, and it's very important that if you're definitely able to, drive from more than one service.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I see some comments coming in right now, and David is saying that on Lyft, for whatever reason, on UK campus is going to be more busy. And you have all of these little different things that really speak to recognizing certain patterns and figuring out, what times can I take advantage of a certain situation. So it's really just all about leveraging these services as opposed to them kind of taking advantage of you. And I mean, I know that I've had someone on my podcast before, and we talked about doing Uber at night. He didn't want to sign up for Lyft, and I told him, hey, you know what? even if you're staying busy with Uber, there are still reasons why you would want to sign up with Lyft or why you would want to sign up with Sidecar. And he couldn't think of one. And I said, well, luckily I have kind of like a crystal ball into the future, and I can tell you that a lot of times you'll come up, maybe you're having issues with your Uber app, or maybe for whatever reason you can't get logged in or the app won't update. Now if you are only driving for Uber, you've just eliminated your chances of making money for that night or until Uber's customer service gets back to you. And as Brian's channel and my site will tell you, I think one of the main reasons why his channel and my site have been so popular is because we do a good job of explaining everything that Uber's customer service and Uber in general doesn't. So that's, a scenario where you might want to have Lyft as a backup. Even if you're getting plenty of Uber rides, you always want to be thinking about diversifying your income and diversifying sources of income. I can give a really good story right now, and this is actually something that didn't happen to me, but I've gotten emailed about it several times. And basically what happens is they're driving Uber, and they have a rider and they get puke in their car, right? So someone pukes in their car, which is obviously something that we probably all experience at one point or another, only once for me. But obviously it sucks. And a lot of drivers, though, if it happens early on in the night, let's say you have someone who is partying way too hard at 8 p.m. and they puke, your night could be over, right? What if it was St. Patrick's Day and you had a puker at 8 p.m., right? So what are you going to do in that situation? You might want to try and clean it. Obviously, there aren't going to be any detailing places. If you take photos and send it into Uber, they'll reimburse you. But now you have a whole night's of earnings that are shot. And if you can get it to the point where it's clean enough, and maybe, obviously if it still smells horrible and you can't clean it, you probably don't want to go back out and drive. But if you're able to clean it up to a reasonable degree, maybe you switch over to Lyft and start doing Lyft. Because Uber will actually, if you try to get reimbursed for a cleaning fee, they won't reimburse you if you go and do rides after that puke or after that event happened. So that's just something that you guys want to keep in mind about leveraging multiple services. Now, I have a ton of stuff on my site, and some of my most popular articles are on Uber versus Lyft. So definitely we can send a wrap up, and we'll definitely give you guys more resources, more information. So if you guys do have questions, while we're seeing that we've got close to over 100 attendees right now, which is awesome. We really are thankful for you guys coming on and listening to what we have to say. Hopefully you can get a ton of value out of this. If you haven't found the chat button, it's up in the upper left-hand corner. Feel free to talk to each other, ask questions. We'll either answer them towards the end or as we go. And other than that, though, we'll just make sure that we're providing you with a ton of information. So the next thing I want to cover that's kind of related to leveraging these multiple services is really trying new places, new things, new times. Now, this is a strategy that I've talked extensively with Brian about, and I think he's going to be able to go into some really good detail. Brian, what are some of the things that you've tried that maybe you didn't even realize would make you money or anything like that?
Actually, a lot of things, Harry. a lot. Because actually, when I first started driving, I've lived in Greater Cincinnati for 9 years, but I live like 30, 35 miles away from the city. I have only gone into like downtown Cincinnati maybe a couple times, maybe for a Reds game, or I only ate at a Cincinnati restaurant once. So I didn't really know the city at all. It was like going in completely blindfolded, and I had no idea what to expect. And these are just things that you just have to keep picking up on the more and more you drive. And one thing that I was able to pick up on very quickly, I'll give you an example. 4 in the morning on Monday is like a wide open opportunity for me because I was one of the only drivers on the road. And that's about the time when people start requesting rides to the airport. And since there's nobody on the road, any request goes to me. And that's actually a great time at 4 and 5 in the morning to be, making those great rides because the airport's not near downtown Cincinnati. It's 12 miles. So it's 12 miles plus any additional distance it is from downtown further north, which is where most of the population of Cincinnati is. So it's always a good ride. It's a good fare, and that's a great golden opportunity to pick up on patterns and to make some money driving for Uber, especially working the hours that people that they don't want to work.
Yeah, I think you said it best, Brian. Working the hours that people don't want to work. Now, I'll be honest, a year ago when I first started driving, I could basically flip on the app and make pretty good money. I mean, I was making over $30 an hour almost. I don't want to say anytime, but anytime it was reasonably busy, I was making very good money. I mean, I would turn it on when I wanted to go to the grocery store just because I knew that I could get a ride somewhere and make a few bucks, pay for my gas and part of my groceries. So, it's really about, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice that I know not a lot of drivers do, but I think is super important, is to take a ride as a passenger. Now, when you take a ride as a passenger, you just learn an insane amount because, you get to see right off the bat, what does a driver do? A lot of drivers don't realize that the experience actually starts the second a passenger requests a ride because they're tracking you. They see where you're coming and they see where you're going. Are you sitting there and standing still, smoking a cigarette, finishing your burrito, or are you on your way to come get them, right? So that's when the passenger experience starts. You would never know that, or you might never think of that if you don't take a ride as a passenger. And along the same lines of Brian, he talked about kind of those early morning rides, and I kind of made a similar discovery just from starting to drive Sunday mornings, and then also as a passenger, I actually took an airport ride. I had a flight at 5 a.m. or 5 or 6 a.m., so I had to be up at 3 or 4 a.m. I wasn't even sure if there would be an Uber available, and the guy told me it was up in LA, and he says, "Dude, Harry, I make a killing at this time. There's no traffic, right? Every single ride is an airport ride." He lived in the valley, so he would start off in the valley, and the only place people are going at 3, 4 a.m. is right to the airport, right? So it was just really all about trying these new things, and you have to think about it. In a saturated driver's market, you have to be willing to try new things, do what other people are not willing to do. Right? A lot of people tend to expect, hey, I want to make above average money. If you want to make above average money, you have to be willing to go above and beyond what other drivers are doing. Right? So that's definitely something I think you want to keep in mind. I'm sure Brian can speak to that and kind of what he's doing to go above and beyond the strategies that he's using. Right, Brian?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's actually quite a few things, to get good ratings, stuff like that. One, I tell you, the number one complaint why people have against drivers is because they don't know where they're going, and that was a struggle for me early on, because as I mentioned, I was new to Cincinnati. I had no idea, where all these main roads were. People are like, "Oh, take me on Columbia Parkway," and those in Cincinnati, which I know there's plenty of them on this call, like, "Oh yeah, that's one of the main roads that goes into Cincinnati." I had no clue, and that will. I tell you, that really hurt my rating in the early going, not knowing where to go about town. And it's probably the best tip of advice is the more experience you have, and don't use Uber's GPS. That got me lost a lot in the early going. Once I switched to Google Maps, I was like, oh man, it was a breath of fresh air. I like Google Maps. I've been using Google Maps for years for any kind of GPS related activity. And that will definitely help not only your ratings, but it will help your driver experience.
Definitely. Now I see a couple people coming in and commenting about a couple items that I want to touch on. Because I think my initial advice is always to basically, when you're first getting started, to really just follow the alcohol. Start off. We know that there's going to be peak demand at 2 a.m. right on a Saturday night, and I'm seeing a lot of people right now saying they love the drunk crowd, and I'm also seeing a lot of people that saying they hate the drunk crowd. Now, personally, I kind of think it's pretty funny with the drunk crowd, so I love doing it. But I can completely understand if you don't want to. And the best thing about driving for Uber and Lyft is that you have these opportunities to try and find areas where you don't need to work at 2 a.m. because you can make plenty of money, and I know many of people who are doing things like that, right? These early morning airport runs, and they can completely avoid the drunk people and never have to deal with puking and all that kind of stuff. Now, for those of you guys who are wondering what the current situation with the airports, I can touch on that really quickly because I see a ton of questions coming in. Now, in almost every city is going to be different. So right off the bat, you know that the easiest way is going to be to check with Uber or Lyft, but in general, airport drop-offs are almost always okay. You need to make sure that you're wearing your trade dress, and the pickups are the problem, right? In a lot of cities, they have legislation in place where it's being worked out, and the pickups are very profitable too. So for you guys, you aren't allowed to pick up right now at most airports. The legislation is in the works, but you got to keep that in mind that the pickups are a problem, and really it's all about those drop-offs for now. And we'll start to see a little shift. I know Brian has done some really cool things. Brian, how do you handle these airport situations?
Yeah, definitely. Here in Cincinnati, we are allowed to drop off, but we cannot pick up. That's as Harry said, that's kind of the generic rule for that. But at the same time, I capitalize on airport drop-offs because those are the best kinds of rides in Cincinnati to do. Those are generally the ones with the highest fares and generally with the better clientele. Notice that almost all of my airport rides have been very friendly people. I'm able to talk to them. I've actually had some very awesome conversations with people going to the airport. Now, what to do after the airport, because I've mentioned that Cincinnati is 12 miles away from the airport. I would, obviously, you have to get off airport property. You cannot stay. Now, I could go back to the city. Sometimes I do. It depends on the time of day and depends what's going on. But at the same time, I'll usually shut my phone off, get back on the highway, start heading back towards the city. I might not have to go all the way back because usually northern Kentucky, there's enough demand I can pick up a ride somewhere in there that will bring me back to the city. But if not, I would definitely head back towards downtown Cincinnati.
Yeah, and definitely. And so for those of you guys who are wondering, I mean, you might be saying, hey, I don't want to have to deal with Uber or Lyft support. And the cool thing right now kind of goes back to my little tip about taking a ride as a passenger, because a lot of you might not know that from the passenger side of the app, you can actually check if UberX pickups, for example, are available in your city. So, I mean, I do this all the time when people ask me, I get emails all the time that say, let's say Brian emails me and say, hey, is UberX pickups okay at the airport in Cincinnati? Now, I have no idea, but I can log on to the passenger side of the app and I can go over to Cincinnati, I can drop a pin in the airport, and if it's okay, will allow me to call an UberX. If it isn't, there'll actually be a geofence where you can't call an UberX, right? So passengers won't be able to call it from the property. Now, I know some passengers will go and drop the pin outside, and at that point, it's up to the driver to see if you're going to go and pick them up, and you're taking on a lot of risk, in my opinion, that I don't think is worth it. So we'll definitely, we can link to an article that I wrote about in the show notes and give you guys a little more info on that airports. But for now, we're going to move on. And so we've kind of covered about leveraging the multiple services and how UberX, basically is very saturated right now. There are a ton of drivers. So thinking about ways that what aren't other drivers doing. Now, one of the big things that I think is really important is seeing opportunities and taking advantage of it as an Uber or a Lyft driver. Now, what I mean by that is when I first started as an UberX driver, I knew lots of people who are basically really, since the money was so good, they were working as much as they could. They knew that it probably wouldn't last forever. They knew that they weren't going to make $40 to $50 and they were going to be able to get, all these fares all the time. And so they basically took advantage of it while they can. I'm seeing a big shift right now. I don't know how many of you guys have thought about this, but looking at Uber Plus and Uber Select that is now popping up in a lot of markets. Now, I'm pretty sure it's not in Brian's market, Cincinnati, but I do know that it's in LA, it's in Orange County, it's in not San Francisco, but it's in Austin, it's in a ton of cities, and it's really popping up. And the cool thing about maybe moving up to a premium service like not even necessarily Uber Black, but Uber Plus or Uber Select or even Uber XL is it's something that other drivers aren't doing, right? So when other drivers aren't doing it, that's always going to give you kind of a leg up on the competition. And what's really cool about UberX and Uber XL and Select, obviously these programs are being tested right now and they're not rolled out nationwide, but in some markets you can actually log in as solely Uber XL, or you also have the option to log in as UberX/Uber XL, where you can get both requests. Now, where that would come into play is that, let's say, obviously you want to do XL most of the time, and you're making a higher, almost double the rates of UberX, but let's say you go and check UberX on the passenger side of the app and you see that it's surging, now it's at 2x. Now you're willing to take an UberX or an XL because you know that you're going to get paid the same amount. So it's definitely, looking at these opportunities that pop up. I'm sure Brian can talk about kind of taking advantage of that opportunity. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's actually another point that I want to discuss here, Harry, and this is actually a great tip of advice. This is actually one of the very first tips I ever gave out on my YouTube channel. It's actually my video. You can all check it out. 3 tips to help boost your Uber driver earnings. That was the video that made my channel explode. Anyway, besides that, the point is use the driver app, the passenger app rather, to see where the cars are. And there's situations where I would go away from the cars, and then there's situations that I would go towards the cars. Because in a saturated market, you're probably going to encounter a lot of nearby cars that are competing with you nearby. And of course, it all works on a radius, and if there's all these cars around you, you have to be in that particular spot at the right time to get the pickup. And if you don't, you're out of luck. And this is where it's very, very important for you to look at the Passenger app. If you don't have the Passenger app, you can download it right off the iTunes or the iOS store or the Google Play store on Android. And I still do this 6 months later. I look it up. I see if there's cars. Oh, I see a lot of cars near me. And then I look at another spot. Oh, there's not so many cars here, but this is a place where I would probably most likely get a ride. Where do you think I'm going to head? Do you think I'm going to really wait there 10, 15, 20 minutes and see, oh, let's see if all these cars clear out? Or try to find the opening and go there, and then bam, you get a ride. And I've been using that tactic very, very successfully now for the last pretty much since I started driving. I figured that out almost right away. And then another situation that I would drive towards the car is sporting events, concerts, big events that have a lot of people in one spot. And then say, like, take a baseball game. A lot of games get out around 10 o'clock or so at night if it's a night game. And right around 10 o'clock, if you hang right out by the Great American Ballpark, which is where the Reds play, you're probably going to get a ride because all those people are coming out of the stadium, the arena, at the same time, and they're going to be requesting rides like bam, 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 bam. Everyone's going to get taken really quick. I witnessed this all the times for not Reds games yet because they haven't started yet, but definitely Bengals games, the football team here in Cincinnati. Like the stadium lets out, boom, everybody's requesting rides. And you can be right by the stadium where all the cars are. So it's important to know when to drive towards the cars and then when not to drive towards the cars. And those are the situations that I would use those in.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think especially because when you see now that Uber is really popping up in a lot of these markets and there are teams and events going on. I mean, I know that Uber and Lyft actually make it pretty easy as far as staying on top of the events, and I know that Brian checks these, as do I, but basically Uber and Lyft are sending out almost weekly driver digests at this point, and I mean, I've spoken with the communications people at Lyft, and that's something that they're really do a good job of. Is Lyft, I think, does it almost every week, and Uber does the same thing for every city, and they basically tell you when the big events are, and I can guarantee you that not everyone is going to read those, not everyone is aware, and so in big cities like LA, for example, there's going to be tons of events, there's going to be tons of things going on. In other cities, smaller markets, there's not as much, so you really have to see when these things are going on, when these events are going on, and know also how to work them smartly. I mean, I did a whole podcast on how I drove during July 4th. Now, I'm going to give you guys a quick story. I didn't just go out and drive. I mean, every single ride I did was over 3.0 surge. So no matter what, no matter how bad or how good of a driver, I'm going to be making pretty good money. But the thing that I did that was really unique that I actually did a whole podcast on was basically I looked ahead of time and figured out how's the traffic going to be, and I checked on my Google Maps and said, hey, I see that everyone is going down this one road down to the beach. And so what I did was every single passenger obviously wanted to go to the beach, so I took them I made sure that it was okay with them, but I took them the back way, and I made sure to say, hey, you know, I've done a few rides and I keep getting stuck in traffic. I want to make sure that I get you guys there. You're going to have to maybe walk a few minutes further, but you'll be able to get there. There won't be any traffic. You won't be sitting there. And so what I did was basically just shuttle people back and forth along that back way, and I was able to avoid traffic, and I worked 4 or 5 hours, averaging close to $50, $60 an hour on July 4th, which was my best weekend ever as an Uber driver. So there's definitely a lot of cool things that you'll discover through experience, and I know that Brian has done a ton of this stuff, so that's definitely some good tips as far as checking the app and really operating in those times where, you know, things are busy and big events. You're gonna make a lot of money. So, you know, that's really what this whole webinar and what our course in general is all about. We really want to teach you guys ways about earning more income and help you guys think about the things that you haven't thought about, right? Because there are a lot of people out there that basically, you know, they go out there, they flip on the app, they do their thing, and they drive. I can tell you guys that the last 20 or 30 Uber rides I've taken, not one single person has heard of my site, which makes me feel sad because now I know that none of them are following any of my tips. So, you guys might be worried that other drivers are getting this info, but I can guarantee you there's so many drivers out there that aren't doing these tips. It really, the thing I like most about, and Brian I know can talk about this too, but it really rewards people who are willing to go above and beyond. I mean, Brian, what do you do to go above and beyond and really kind of take your ride sharing to the next level?
Yeah, that's the whole point of starting my YouTube channel, was to, well, at first, actually, what's kind of funny is my YouTube channel turned out to be something completely different than what I had intended it for it to be. I started my channel actually as a case study. And I was going to say, well, let's just see, Uber says I can make this much money in Cincinnati. What can the average driver who wants to work their butt off for so many hours, well, what can they make here? What can they do? I mean, what are the numbers? Let's get some math here. And that's how my channel started. A few case studies, really didn't quite catch on, and then I made that video on 3 tips to help boost your Uber driver earnings that I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, and that's where things changed. That was the major turning point, because that video just took off completely on its own, and that video still gets like 100 to 200 hits a day, and I don't even touch it. I mean, that's. But here's the point. I mean, it's not to say how popular my video is. The point I'm trying to make is that video was a video in which I gave help, I gave advice to Uber drivers, and then I could see the comments coming in, people saying, "Oh, Brian, this is a great video, blah blah blah," stuff like this is so helpful. I can use these tips. Thank you so much. And I realized that was so much more useful than just creating income case studies. And that's where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to dedicate my channel now to, making more videos on helpful tips, strategies, and advice. And Harry, I think you have something else you want to add on to what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that, selfishly, I run my site and do my podcast and everything because when I tell people and when I teach people, it makes me a better driver, right? When people are asking me questions and saying, hey, how did you do this or how did you do that, it makes me think about it really in depth, and then I have to go out there and really invest in myself. And that's kind of what, my target audience, right? I'm sure you guys have seen that there are a lot of forums, I'm not going to name any names, but there are a lot of Facebook groups, I'm not going to name any names, right? There's not a whole lot of people out there that are in the same mindset as Brian and I and all the drivers and the community that we've cultivated, who they say, hey, I like doing this, I'm gonna make this work for me, and if I can't, I'm gonna move on, right? And I think that I'm still able to make this work, and there's a ton of basically the audience that we're trying to market to, we're going to be investing, where we want people who are going to be investing in their career, right? We want people who are willing to go out there, watch videos, read articles, and take their rideshare driving to the next level, which sounds kind of cheesy, right? But you really have to. You're not going to be able to just flip on the app and kind of, just move from there. So for those of you guys who are watching the webinar right now, if you haven't discovered the chat function, it's up in the upper left-hand corner. We got a bunch of people on there right now. Quick shout-outs. Let's see. We got Andrew chatting, Frank, Scott, Hugo, everyone, right? So really appreciate you guys all joining. If you have any questions, start asking away. We're going to keep talking, and we'll answer a couple of the most we're not going to be able to get to every question, but we'll definitely try to do our best to answer a few questions. And if not, worst case scenario, when we send out our wrap-up email tomorrow, we'll be able to direct you to the answers of a lot of these questions that you guys are having right now. Because to be honest, I'm seeing a lot of questions that I've answered a million times, and if enough people ask it, we'll definitely answer. But if not, I'm going to send you a link to one of my articles or one of Brian's YouTube videos. So real quick, before we move on to the FAQ, feel free to start asking your questions. And the last thing I want to talk about really as far as earning extra income is basically all of the ancillary opportunities that can arise from rideshare, right? There's all these things that pop up. When someone sits in your car, you instantly have this connection, whether it's something you're going to help them out with just on a mental level. Maybe they've had a bad day and you can help them, or there's business opportunities. I did a whole podcast with people who were basically leveraging rideshare to promote their side business. Now, you guys might be familiar with the Uberpreneur article that popped up in Forbes. Well, they basically stole the idea from my pod. No, I'm just kidding. They got found a really cool guy though, who basically went around selling all this jewelry to his passengers. And I mean, the article was really interesting because the way he approached it was he wasn't selling things to people. He was driving people around primarily, first and foremost, and then if it came up, he would go ahead and say, obviously the number one question people ask you is, hey, what do you do on the side? Now, I've interviewed people who basically had bands, who were masseuses, and all these different things, and basically, these people are able to promote their side business and leverage that instant connection and instant, basically level of trust with other drivers. Now, I know obviously I've kind of do that with my site, and every time I have a passenger or a driver, I'm talking to them about that. But there are a whole bunch of these business opportunities that you can really take advantage of. And I mean, I know, Brian, I mean, have you heard of anything cool or anything like that that you can speak to in that regard? Brian, can you hear me? Well, anyway, so we still have some questions coming in, and so for those of you guys who are wondering if the webinar will be accessible later, the webinar is definitely, we're going to put this, we'll send out an email tomorrow. Once we get the webinar processed and everything, we'll send it out to everyone, and then you can basically, you'll be able, we're also going to include a bunch of links. So this is good because I'm glad we have you guys chatting here. You guys are reminding me to include all these good links, and we'll definitely be able to send you some. Yeah, actually, so Frank, you just mentioned a really good point, real estate. So I've actually met a few realtors who are basically promoting their, the fact that they're a realtor, and so when they go out, and it's just such an easy way to network. And I mean, even if it's not a business opportunity, it's still the network opportunity that arises from it. So we lost Brian for a second there, but he's back now.
Yeah,
so
I'm back.
All right, awesome. Keep on coming in with the questions. I think we'll go through and answer.
Yeah, Harry, I can add a point here if you'd like.
Okay,
I
yeah,
actually want to. Yeah, I actually made a video on this on my channel, how to leverage Uber into new opportunities. And it does include a lot of things that Harry just said. But for instance, I've heard some situations where people, they're unemployed and they're driving for Uber in the meantime between jobs. And if you work during the right times of day, for instance, taking a lot of business clientele or taking the kinds of people who would make a great connection to, maybe they're your future employer, or maybe they know somebody who could be your future employer. Isn't that a great opportunity? Like, oh, wow, I just met this really cool person that, I might be able to get a job with. Because I've had so many interesting people in my car. I've taken multi-millionaires in my car. I took a group of 3 guys who sold their business in Northern Kentucky for $45 million. Yeah, they use UberX here in Cincinnati. It was actually really cool meeting them. And even though I talked to them about their business and stuff, their line of work really wasn't anything that I wanted to do. But there was something that I did want to ask them because they were successful people, and I got to drop this guy off at his house, which was a multi-million-dollar house. It was very beautiful, and I asked him, what are your keys to success? What did you have to go through, to get to where you are now? What's your advice? I'd love to hear it. And he kind of shared his story a little bit. As most successful people, it's not easy. It's a huge, long struggle, a lot of heartache before anything happens in your business. And it's just during those times that you really just have to, stick it out and pull through and just keep going. You have to have a clear vision in your mind before you execute on taking actions towards meeting your goals. So even on rides like that, it's like, wow, I really got a lot out of that ride. And I wasn't quite expecting that, when you pick up passengers. It's pretty cool networking with people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm seeing a ton of comments come in right now just about the networking and business opportunities that come about. And as you guys have probably realized, yeah, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to network, or it doesn't cost you anything to promote your business or even promote yourself, right, if the topic comes up. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. I can share a really cool story about a guy who I met in San Francisco who was leveraging the same thing. And basically, all right, so you guys are all asking if Brian's single. He is, by the way. In case any ladies are wondering, I'm married, sorry. Have to.
Yeah, Harry's off the market.
But yeah. Anyways, back to the issue at hand. So I talked to this driver who is basically doing a startup, right? And he's driving around San Francisco, UberX. He does this for fun, and he likes the networking and the business opportunities, but he's not out there promoting his business. And he says, hey, he ended up actually recruiting an engineer to come join his startup. He ended up talking to someone, and he said, "Hey, I'm a startup guy, right? Just telling him about what he does." And he says, "Oh, I'm looking for someone to join me." And I mean, so that was really cool. And then he actually ended up that same driver ended up taking someone from Google Ventures, which is Google's venture capital arm, and he actually ended up being able to pitch. He ended up being able to pitch his company to Google Ventures, which was a really cool story. So there's all these opportunities, and basically you guys have probably realized it, but I just want to make sure that you're taking advantage of it, right? So I see a cool couple examples coming in of people. Shalon says that he owns a magazine and gives writers copies only when they ask to have one, though. That's great. I mean, you can put it just right. You can have like a nice plastic little display and put it on the seat so that they can just take it as they go. So there's really a lot of cool items that you can get. And so for those of you guys who are wondering, yeah, there is a little bit of delay on this video, but the chat and everything else is still instant. So feel free to go ahead and cover that. And so Robert, we actually already covered multiple platforms at the beginning of this. We'll send you a link and you can check it out. But so basically right now, I've seen a lot of questions come in about tipping, and I think tipping is huge. Obviously, right now with Uber, they don't accept tips on the app, but you still do get tips with Uber and Lyft. I mean, one of the reasons why I love Lyft is that you can tip right there on the app. And I mean, I know that I see probably, I'd say 30 to 40% of my Lyft rides are getting tips. And I mean, while I don't expect a tip on every ride, I do think that if I go and provide really above the top service and kind of, I've written articles about this, and basically the thing with tips is you should never expect tips. And I think that's a problem with a lot of drivers. I mean, right now, for example, not a lot of drivers are giving out bottles of water. Right? When I first started doing it about a year ago, everyone was giving water, candy, snacks, right? How do you get and you would get a nice little tip from it, right? But then passengers got accustomed to it. They started saying, hey, everyone's doing it, right? So as a driver, you have to think, if everyone else is doing it, now how can I stand out above that? And now we saw, obviously, a bunch of fare cuts, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we did this webinar and this whole video course, because of the fare cuts and figuring out ways to earn more money. But, because of that, you basically see that now, I feel like, in the last 15 Uber rides I've taken as a passenger, so I take a lot of rides as a passenger. I'm going to keep on harping on that point because I think it's super important. Now, for me, obviously, I have ulterior motives because I also talk to them about issues that are going on with drivers, but I still do think it's really important. And I'll say in my last 15 Uber rides, not UberX and Lyft, not one driver has offered me a bottle of water. I mean, I still tipped $1 if I was on Lyft, or if I had cash, $1 on Uber, but now more than ever, you go and you can find those little 8-ounce water bottles. We call them little grenades, right? I mean, I just bought some the other day at Ralph's, and they ended up being, I think, 15 cents a piece, which is almost nothing. I mean, so if you can go out there, and whether you're giving them out or basically, since other drivers aren't doing those things now, I think when you can find those items are going to have a high return on your investment, then those are good investments. I mean, Brian, you're the master at getting tips. So I'm really curious to hear what you have to say as far as getting tips and things like that.
Well, I think the first thing I say is I think it's a lot of my personality. It's just like I'm nice to people.
Yeah.
And I mean, people are like, well, yeah, but I'm nice to people too, Brian. Well, what do I do different? That you get tips and I don't. I think because I do get tipped a lot, and I try to find small things, sometimes very, very small things, and then fill that need. Because I'm a people person. I like to talk to people. And here's some situations, like someone sneezes in my car. Would you like a tissue? Not a big deal, but it's those little things like, oh, wow, you have tissues on you? Yeah, I do. Thank you. And sometimes I'll ask my passengers, like, especially if they're more quiet and they don't want to talk, I'll be like, you want to listen to music? And like, oh, sure. I got a radio. I got auxiliary. You want something on your phone? Stuff like that. Make them happy. And sometimes, like, I've had other cases where people get in my car and for some reason or another they get pretty emotional. Like, there's one story I almost got emotional over just by hearing it. I haven't cried in 9 years. Seriously, it takes a lot for me to cry. I'm very emotionally tough when it comes to something like that. Like I picked up two couples who had gone out together, and they were long time college friends, and they're like best friends. And it was the last time they were gonna see each other for like years because the guy had just accepted a assignment from Procter and Gamble, a major company that's headquartered here in Cincinnati. He got accepted to a new job in Dubai. And that's obviously, if you don't know where Dubai is, that's like halfway around the world. That's a long way away. That's a lot of distance. And they were crying like puddles of tears. And it's very, very emotional to watch. I gave them all tissues. They were all very happy. And then I dropped the first couple off, and then there's one girl left in my car at the end, and I talked to her like the whole way back to her house. I just talked her through it. I was like, no, it's not in my job description to talk to people. The only thing I have to do is drive and take you home. But just out of the, as a human being, just out of the goodness of my own heart, I just talked to her. Just talked, explain like, are you okay? Just start asking questions, stuff like that. And I just had a really, really nice conversation with her. She really liked it, and she gave me I think it was a might have been a $20 tip, but it was at least a $10 tip. And it's small things like that. Just try and help people and try to meet their needs despite how small it is.
Definitely. And I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of these things can be really little things. They don't have to be huge things. Like a lot of you are mentioning, hey, I've never given out water, I've never given out candy or mints, and I still have a 5.0 rating. And that can be completely fine too, but it is about doing the little things, and it is about, like Brian said, just these little things. For example, I know one and I just saw someone mention in the chat too, that I really like providing things that you can invest in, and then they pay dividends for long term. Like for example, something as simple as an aux cable. You pay whatever, $5 for it one time, and then anytime a passenger says, hey, can I play my music? You don't even need to offer it to them. Just say, hey, can I play my music? If the passenger says, can I play my music? Boom, that's a guaranteed 5-star, and that's going to increase your chances of being a tip, right? It's so simple, but I mean, you'd be surprised how many drivers don't have an aux cord, and if you're driving the party hours, you're driving those late nights, you know how important an aux cord is, right? So people, it's really these little things, and I think that's what's really important, and that's what we're kind of aiming to, help you guys with this webinar, and especially our course. I mean, we've kind of developed this course as basically, I'll give you guys a quick little intro because we really think that a lot of these points, we've kind of covered in our course, and basically it's 10 video modules, and we saw a problem, right? The problem was drivers aren't earning enough, right? I'm lucky because I feel like I have all these insights, right, from what articles are people looking at on my site, what are they asking me about. I know what you guys care about, and whether you like to admit it or not, money is huge, right? That's why we base our whole course around earning more income, right? All of my top articles, all of my top podcasts, all have something to do with earning income, how to make more money, right? And so that's the problem we saw. Drivers aren't making enough, right? And if you are making good money, you want to know how to make more, because that's what a good business person and that's what a good entrepreneur, and whether you guys realize it or not, you guys are all business owners now that you're drivers, and you got to figure out how do you reduce your costs, how do you increase your earnings, right? So that's really the need that we saw, and that's what we tried to address with our course. I mean, we're going to give you guys a quick little intro to our course. I think we kind of covered all the points that we wanted to in our webinar. We definitely appreciate all the questions. Brian, I mean, so we created these 10 video modules. Maybe you can give a little bit of detail, kind of what's covered in the course, and basically a little more information on that.
Right, definitely. Yeah, we've been working very, very hard for the last couple months developing this course because we did see a problem. Because Uber and Lyft, they love to sign up drivers, and they'll help you through the application process. No problem. They'll take you step by step, and then right when you're approved, good luck. There is nothing more training to do with those Uber and Lyft, and they'll just throw you right out there. Say, okay, you're signed up. Good luck. Make that money. Well, where do I go? Where do I start? All these questions. What do I bring in my car? How do I treat my passengers? A lot of these questions are completely unanswered, and the new drivers are completely lost. And I've heard a lot of stories say, people who have come to my YouTube channel because they're looking for answers. These people are hungry for a solution to their problems because they want to be a good Uber driver and they want to, make the most out of, driving for them, make some pretty good, decent money. And that's why we created this course. So our course is divided up into 2 sections. We have a standard course. We have a gold course. We highly recommend our gold course. That is our complete course, step-by-step blueprint. That'll take you all the way from your first day driving for Uber right to our very advanced possible strategies. Strategies that are nowhere to be found on my YouTube channel, despite how much information I've given out. I've given out a lot on my channel. I have. But there's a lot of things that are in our gold course that you will not find anywhere else except inside our course. And we wanted to create, the step-by-step guide blueprint. It goes through, driver ratings, how to, give you some basic strategies, what services should you drive for, how to balance 2 services, stuff like that. And then on the gold course, we take that, a step further. We want to get into the real meat, the core strategies of what we do and what we've learned. And we go over, very specific surge pricing strategies. There's a lot of things that drivers get caught up with that, they completely, miss out on the surge. They miss out on a very good opportunity. And we give you details and steps to make sure that you are not one of those drivers, that you will be able to take advantage of the surge. Stuff like that. We go over advanced tactics, and then we go over some very often overlooked tax strategies. I know, Harry, you created that module. Do you want to share some insight on what people will find in that module?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So it's a ton of, basically the whole course is revolved around figuring out, ways that you're going to, all of these things that we cover are really going to lead to earning more income. Because, I mean, we saw that there was this need and, that basically drivers are looking at, they want to maximize their profits, basically. That's why we named the course Maximizing Rideshare Profits. So, I mean, I know a couple of you in here have already actually taken the course. Andrew is commenting right now on the course, and definitely appreciate Andrew was one of the first people. Yeah, Andrew was one of the first people to purchase this course and, start giving us feedback. So, I mean, I think, basically the thing that you guys really want to consider is how this course is going to benefit you. The people we want to, market to, and the people that we want to work with are basically people who are willing to invest in their career and who see this as an opportunity to better themselves. Now, if you're expecting to kind of come on and we're going to be like, hey, we're going to lay this out, boom, 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 you go out and drive tomorrow, you're going to double your profits, that's not going to happen, right? I mean, there isn't a magic solution, right? It's really all about kind of working harder. I mean, figuring out ways to work smarter, not harder, and figuring out these tips and tricks. And I mean, the cool thing about why I love working with Brian is because we really have these different, different perspectives. Brian's a full-time driver. I'm a part-time driver. But I mean, between the two of us, we have years of driving experience, which in rideshare years is like dog years. So we might as well be like 15 years old each, right? But so we have all these years of experience, and the thing that comes with that experience is talking to drivers. I mean, obviously through my site and the videos that Brian has created, in addition to our driving experience, we've interviewed hundreds of drivers, and we've really figured out what they're doing a good job of, what they're doing a poor job of, right? And so those are the things that basically, you guys might not be out there thinking about. And we're trying to cover all of the things that you guys don't think about on a daily basis, right? So that's kind of why we developed this course. And I mean, we work pretty hard on it. We cover, we'll send you guys to the offer, and you can definitely check it out. But as far as what's in it, we have basically our standard course, right? And it's going to be 5 video modules, and we have our gold course, 5 video modules. Now, you might be wondering which course is for me. Now, the standard course is really basically the building blocks, the fundamentals, and we really cover everything. We really cover exactly what you need, what information you need to get started as a driver. But the thing that, I like to joke about is, since we've getting feedback from a lot of these people, a lot of people are saying, hey, man, I completely forgot about a lot of this stuff, and I completely forgot about what's involved when you're first getting started, and kind of going back and really solidifying. It might sound kind of silly, but I mean, I can give you guys the perfect example. Every year when I was used to play volleyball in college, every single year, for the first 2 weeks of the season, we would go in and we'd work on only the fundamentals, and it was so boring and so monotonous and so repetitive, but we had to do it because we all knew that it was really important to our success. So there's definitely a standard course for new drivers. You guys are going to love it. You guys are going to get started, get going right off the bat. You're going to be able to drive, after you watch these videos. All the videos are 10 to 20 minutes. You guys can go and check them out. They're really quick, but the real meat of the course, which I know we devoted a lot of time to, is basically the gold course. And now the gold course is where we really break down the more advanced strategies that Brian mentioned as far as finding surge and figuring out taxes. And we basically have modules there for advanced drivers. You definitely, if you're a new driver, you'll need to go through the standard one. And if you buy the gold course, it actually comes with the standard course. So it's really kind of tough tackling the tough situations and basically figuring out ways that you can go and really maximize your profits. I know, Brian, you were pretty excited about that gold course. What do you think? What kind of value are people going to get out of that?
They're going to get a lot of value out of it. We've put a lot more of our time into creating the gold course. So the videos are longer. There's more strategies. It's a lot more laid out than the standard course. So the standard course is definitely laid out, but we wanted to give our very, very best on that. We've had a couple questions come in about the course. First, how long is the course total? It's about 2 to 3 hours long, and the price point right now tonight for the gold course, which does include the standard course, is $97. We put the offer up. You should be seeing it on the right side of your screen if you have not already. So you definitely want to take advantage of that tonight, and this is the blueprint that will help you, guide you step by step into the whole process of starting out driving for Uber and giving you some tips, strategies, and advice to go moving forward, and then finally our deep strategies on how we absolutely make the most out of driving for Uber.
Yeah, definitely, guys. So, we're kind of coming to a close on this webinar now, and we really want to thank you. I mean, I had a ton of fun, and obviously the whole point of this webinar was really to give you guys some ways to maximize your income. I mean, we're really looking at ways to help you and basically figure out, ways that you can really go out there and learn and figure out ways that you can do a better job and earn more income, do what other drivers aren't doing. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of us. You got a lot out of each other. I think kind of bringing together a bunch of people with similar and like-minded views is really important too. So this was obviously our first webinar. We definitely wanted to, all right, Chuck says he's going for the gold. Chuck, I already like you.
Yes.
Send me an email. I'll send you a Rideshare Guy hat.
Nice.
But yeah, so these are kind of the things that we're really covering. We're really psyched about going forward, that we're really going to be covering this in more in depth. And I mean, honestly, I'm really happy with the response we get for this webinar, and we'll figure out going forward what what kind of feedback we're getting, what you guys want to be covered, and what you want to see going forward in these webinars. Because I think we're definitely going to be doing some more going forward. Obviously, we have a ton of information in the course, and for you guys who are wondering, if you do go and buy that course right now, you will get instant access to it. You'll get a login. You'll have as much time as you want to check out the videos, and we'll redirect you. You can check out the offer. It has the sales page. So at the end of the webinar, basically, we're going to redirect you to the course for more info, and you'll be able to go to that page. You'll be able to see exactly what we covered in the point. We did a ton of work. To be honest, in addition to the course, we did a ton of work explaining what's in the course and basically telling you guys, hey, we're going to cover these points. So you'll know exactly what you're getting. And in that gold course, I think there's a ton of information. I mean, I give out a ton of information, as you guys know. I see a couple people commenting, hey, Harry gives out a ton of stuff on his site for free, which is 100% true. Brian gives out a ton of information for free, right? And that's what we love. We love doing stuff for free, but at the same time, if you're looking for that crash course, if you're looking for something that's really, you're going to be able to go in, do 2 to 3 hours of work and really get a ton of information and basically figure out, how can I, increase my earnings and all of that good stuff, then you're going to be able to go to this course and get that quick, dirty guide basically to figuring it all out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed everything. Brian, had a great time with you, and if you want to say any parting words.
It's been a pleasure. It really has. I've worked with Harry now for about 3 months, and wow, it's gone really, really well. You know, you really learn a lot about yourself when, you know, you're working with somebody else. You know, I've learned a lot, grown a lot more growing to do. You know, we're really on the pioneer movement because this is, you know, I did our research and I could not find any other driver webinar that's ever been held. And if it has been held, it has definitely not been held in this capacity. You know, for how many people showed up here. I think at one point we had about 118 people on this call at once, and this is so awesome to be able to bring drivers all around the world, you know, all around the United States into this webinar and give them free tips, strategies, advice, you know, and stuff like that. And that's our passion. That's our goal. We like to help people. You know, that's why I have my YouTube channel. That's why Harry has his blog. You know, because we know that drivers are looking for answers, and we want to be able to give people the solution, the step-by-step. So if you have not taken advantage of our course yet, you'll definitely want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, most definitely, guys. All right, thanks for joining, and we'll definitely.
Yep. Later, guys.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Okay, it's done, Harry.
We're still live, it says.